Welcome everyone to Daily Hope. My name is Ryan Pfeiffer, Associate Pastor, and we're going to hit the pause button on our march through the book of Judges, and we're going to turn to Luke chapter 24, because we find the disciples in this passage in a moment that we can relate to right now as we stand on the threshold of a brand new year. Here we are in between 2020 and 2021. 2020 is behind us, and there's a lot about that year that we would just assume leave in the past. And as we look ahead to 2021, there's a lot to be hopeful about, but there's also still a lot of uncertainty. And so to help us enter into this with a spiritual perspective, I want to just introduce to us this idea of liminal space. The word liminal comes from the Latin word limen, meaning threshold, or any point or place of entering or beginning. And here we are at the point of beginning of a new year and the beginning of a new season of God's work in our midst. A liminal space is the time between the what was and the what is next. It is a place of transition, a season of waiting, and not knowing. Liminal space is where all transformation takes place if we learn to recognize and respond to the presence of Jesus in our midst. And to help us do that, we're going to turn to Luke 24. That same day, two of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. And as they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. Okay, pause. A lot has happened in 2020. There's a lot that we still don't understand, a lot of crazy moments that maybe still disturb us. Well, the disciples are in a time or in a moment like that as well. Jesus has been crucified. The disciples are scattered all over the place. And there's even rumors that Jesus' tomb has been found empty, and a lot of mixed messages about what has happened to his body. Verse 15, and as they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing him, and he asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there the last few days." Now, Jesus responds with a touch of irony. Verse 19, Jesus asked, "What things?" It's just enough to make you laugh, right? Them explaining to Jesus what happened to him. So what can we learn about recognizing and responding to Jesus in our midst? Verse 16 says this, God kept them from recognizing him. Why would God do that? Now, God reveals himself to us according to the measure of our faith, because it's with our faith that we see God and recognize him and are able to respond to him in our lives. Circumstances, understanding our circumstances does not necessarily increase our faith, but recognizing Jesus in our midst does. So verse 17, they stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Why are they sad? Presumably because of what we read in verse 21. It says that they said to Jesus, "We had hoped that he, being Jesus, was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago." It's hard to trust God and recognize him when we are sad because of crushed and destroyed expectations. It's hard to recognize Jesus in our midst when we, in the midst of our uncertainty and confusion and trial. And that's where we find ourselves right now. As we look ahead to 2021, there's still a lot we don't know, both about the past and about the future. But as we look ahead, we can be certain of this. We can be certain of where God will be. And that takes us to verse 15. It says that Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. I just love this verse. Just picture for a moment these two disciples walking along the road by themselves, disheartened and discouraged and talking about all the things that have happened. And all of a sudden, Jesus himself comes up alongside them and is walking with them. This passage shows us that God is going to be where he promises to always be. We may not know what is in store for us in 2021, but God will be where he always promises to be, and that is walking beside you. Matthew 28 ends with these amazing words from Jesus. "And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I love this promise. Let that promise just sink into your heart as we look ahead to a new year. I love this verse because we see Luke 24 show us what Jesus meant by this promise. He didn't mean it in a sentimental way or in a metaphorical way. He meant it literally, because in Luke 24 we see Jesus literally walking beside him. And in the same way, you can be sure that Jesus will be walking beside you in this new year. Our hope in the future is not in the outcome of any circumstances. Our hope is in the promise of God to walk beside us in the midst of our uncertainty. And when your hope is in his presence, we are empowered to live a vastly different quality of life and have a radically different perspective. That's where our hope rests. And may God in this new year open your eyes, no matter what it has in store for us, to see Jesus walking beside us. And may that lift your heart with fresh faith and strength. God bless you, and have a great new year.